Opening the center creates immediate scope for bishops, preparing to contest central space. Developing a knight towards the center immediately contests white's central pawn and prepares for potential pawn breaks. Establishing immediate central pawn presence, challenging black's knight and preparing for queenside expansion. Solidifying the center and preparing for rapid development, this response embraces a positional approach, steering the game towards a Queen's Indian or Nim's Indian structure. Developing a knight to its natural square, NC3 supports the central pawn push and prepares for further development while keeping options open. Challenging the center immediately, black initiates a dynamic Queen's Gambit decline structure, aiming to disrupt white's pawn formation and create counterplay. Initiating a pin on the knight immediately complicates black's central pawn structure. Solidifying the pawn structure and preparing for central pawn breaks is the immediate objective. Reinforcing the center's stability and preparing for pawn advances is the idea here, avoiding early pawn commitment. Developing the knight to d7 solidifies the center's pawn chain and prepares for the queenside expansion. Solidifying the center and preparing kingside castling, white adopts a calm, classical setup, aiming for long-term positional advantage. Forcing the bishop to decide its fate immediately creates a crucial decision point for white's development. Retreating the bishop allows it to be redeployed, perhaps to g3, eyeing the kingside while keeping the central pawns intact. Securing the monarch is paramount. This castling move prioritizes king's safety in the ensuing strategic skirmish. Pushing the pawn forward restricts black's queenside development, aiming for a cramped position. Solidifying the queenside pawn structure, but it cedes central space for white's pieces. Developing the bishop to an active square, it aims to support the pawn push and potentially exchange off black's dark-squared bishop. Opening the queenside flank aggressively disrupts white's central structure and seeks dynamic counterplay. Expanding on the queenside, white seeks to liberate his pieces and restrict black's counterplay. A bold attempt to disrupt white's queenside pawn chain, opening lines but potentially creating weaknesses. Solidifying the queenside pawn structure while preventing black's immediate queenside expansion. Breaking open the queenside offers active counterplay, but beware of weakening the dark squares. Capturing the pawn opens the A-file, creating immediate pressure on black's queenside structure and potentially a gateway for future piece incursions. Sacrificing the exchange to disrupt white's queenside pawn structure, potentially creating open lines for black's rooks. Reclaiming the rook opens up the queen to pressure the queenside and adds a piece to the central fight. The knight embarks on a daring sortie, seeking influence on the kingside, yet potentially creating a positional vacuum in the center. Gaining initiative, white's queen swoops to a centralizing square, threatening immediate disruption. Sacrificing a knight for pawn activity on the queenside seems too ambitious, potentially isolating the king. This pawn advance opens a crucial diagonal for the queen and creates a passed pawn threat, demanding immediate attention from black. Unleashing the pawn chain, this move fractures white's queenside structure, creating a new target on c5 for future exploitation. Reclaiming the central pawn advances your queenside majority, aiming for queenside space and potential pawn breaks. This pawn advance fights for central space and prepares to liberate the bishop on f8, but it might weaken the dark squares around the king. Securing the monarch amidst the central pawn tension is paramount, preparing for potential queenside action. Initiating a pawn-pawn offensive that could unravel white's center and create new attacking avenues. Reclaiming central space becomes paramount as the bishop redirects to bolster the queenside pawn chain. Unbalancing the pawn structure, black opens lines for active counterplay and targets the weakened d4 square. Initiating a knight sortie toward the queenside, white seeks to exploit the weakened pawn structure after black's recent capture and advance. Unlocking the queenside with this knight maneuver aims to disrupt white's pawn structure and initiate counterplay on the open files. Striking the queenside rook eliminates a defender and opens lines, but weakens the d4 pawn. Retrieving the pinned knight, this decision centralizes the piece, preparing for a more active role in the ensuing middle game skirmish. Initiating queenside pressure, the white queen eyes potential infiltration routes, forcing black to defend carefully. Unlocking the central pawn chain's potential, this advance aims to destabilize white's pawn structure and activate black's pieces for a more dynamic game. Securing the d-pawn with this capture creates immediate counterplay and frees the bishop. Reclaiming the initiative, black aims to activate the misplaced knight and contest the crucial light squares, potentially disrupting white's queen placement. Securing the queenside initiative by pinning down black's pawns becomes paramount. Reactivating the queen's pressure on the queenside, a bold attempt to complicate the position. Unlocking the queen's influence on the queenside offers positional compensation for the pawn deficit. Black consolidates the center and prepares to challenge white's queen with the rook. Relocating the queen to pressure the queenside pawns while maintaining central influence is a key strategic objective here. Asserting presence on the queenside, this knight seeks to disrupt white's queenside pawn structure while eyeing advanced outposts. Consolidating power in the center, this maneuver prepares to contest the vital central files and potentially isolate the enemy queen. Securing the king's retreat path anticipates potential pawn advances and consolidates defense. Reasserting pressure on the queenside and threatening a pawn advance, this play aims to seize initiative through a dynamic maneuvering sequence. Initiating counterplay along the open file to challenge white's queen and pressure the weakened queenside pawns. Strengthening the king's defenses by preparing to connect the rooks through the g-file, aiming for a more unified and protected position. Sensing potential piece activity, black repositions the rook to a more aggressive diagonal, eyeing white's weakened queenside structure. This maneuver aims to bolster the queenside, while simultaneously preventing any sneaky infiltration by black's rook. Unleashing the queen on the queenside opens up active play, targeting white's vulnerable kingside pawns. Seizing the file while developing a kingside initiative, white aims to unravel black's defenses. A daring foray into enemy territory, aiming to disrupt white's queenside stability and create counterplay. Securing the c-file now strengthens your central presence and prepares to challenge the exposed black king. Seizing the open file, black boldly challenges white's centralized rook and prepares to regroup his scattered forces. Aimed at consolidating the queenside, this seeks to improve piece mobility, anticipating a potential pawn push on the kingside. Black reclaims a pawn and activates the bishop, eyeing white's queenside pawn weaknesses. Unleashing a discovered attack, the white queen forces the black king from its shelter into the open, aiming to exploit the pinned pieces. The king ventures from its shelter, initiating a bold but precarious march into the enemy's attacking zone. Unleashing a knight to pressure the weakened queenside pawns, threatening to disrupt black's defensive setup. Repositioning the queen to attack the bishop and potentially create a passed pawn on the queenside offers black new dynamic possibilities. Unleashing a swift attack, this forcing check aims to disrupt black's defensive formation and potentially expose the king. King's safety is paramount, and repositioning the monarch to a more secure corner offers vital breathing room. Reinforcing the central pawn chain solidifies white's pawn majority and prepares for a powerful queenside advance. Reactivating the rook on the second rank asserts black's claim on the open file, preparing to challenge white's central control and potentially create threats against the king. Unleashing the knight from its passive defensive, post on the edge of the board to engage in the central struggle. Sacrificing the pawn on d3 opens crucial diagonals for the black queen and knight, aiming to disrupt white's consolidated position and create counterplay. Activating the knight to a central outpost disrupts black's coordinated defense and threatens immediate tactical complications. Securing the king's safety is paramount, allowing for potential counterplay or consolidation. Unleashing a potent check, white aims to shatter black's pawn screen and expose the king. Exposing the king to such a direct threat demands immediate defensive repositioning. Unleashing the queen forces the king into a precarious, exposed position, a tactical gamble with clear risks. Exposing the monarch to this relentless assault is a grave miscalculation. Exploiting the exposed king with a powerful knight fork is the immediate aim, creating mating threats.